guys, welcome back to Of Stone and Clay, episode 121. Today we are here with Mallory Everton. Thank you for joining.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, of course. It's funny, we have been talking for the last hour, so I don't know if we have anything else to say.
Oh, we do.
I'm just kidding. No, it's funny. I always am like, there's sometimes this awkward period where like a guest sits down when we're like getting the cameras set up and stuff, and I want to chat, but I want to be like,
you want to save it.
yeah, this is
You wanna
good.
save
This
all
is
the
good
good
stuff.
stuff.
Yeah. And so sometimes I'm just kind of like quiet before we start, but we just got after it. We started getting into it. So Mallory is an actress, a writer, a director, a little bit of a musician too. Yeah.
Oh, gosh, I'm embarrassed, but I do like
You dabble
music.
in the dark arts?
I dabble
Okay.
in the dark arts.
Okay, good. And also a podcaster as well. Yeah. Tell me a little bit about you have the one podcast and then you're starting a new one. Yes.
I'm in the process of, I'm just kickstarting a podcast right now called
Yeah.
Gods, Ghosts, and UFOs.
Good.
I love like
Of
all
those
the,
three, which do you like the most?
I mean, I have to say Gods probably
Yeah.
because that's like the thing controlling all of them.
Yeah.
But the truth is, like, not to go too crazy too fast, but one of the things I love most about the sort of like unseen world, whether you're coming at it from a spiritual angle or whether you're a person who is like looking into all the experiences people are having with UFOs, or whether or not people have had like experiences with the beyond, it's world expanding stuff.
Yeah.
And it's inexplicable. So I feel like I've just always been really interested in the stuff we can't explain. I don't know if it's because I grew up religious and you talk about angels and demons and what happens after you die and like spirits and ancestors, and there's just this openness.
There's some paranormal stuff.
There is.
Yeah.
There's definitely paranormal stuff, and people having visions and being and even just like spiritual awakenings.
Yeah.
There's language in the kind of UFO community that's the same. They like people talking about having experiences with non-human intelligence. I know how kooky it sounds, but that's, to me, it's kind of all like it exists in a similar space where it kind of forces you to keep your mind open. So I have these two friends who are very similarly into breaking all that stuff down and to really just try to keep your mind wide open.
Yeah.
Can you be open to it without having to close off and call someone insane? What if the world got a little bigger if you just even made space for their story?
Yeah.
And I think that's starting to happen. I mean, we had like a congressional hearing 2 summers ago where all these military men came forward and talked about their very real experiences with UFOs and like non-human biologicals, like non-human corpses. I'm sorry, is this what you expected to tell us?
This is all I care about. Yeah.
It's just very much, I just love that whole area. Yeah. I like going into it with people. I love, like, if I'm at a party and I'm having a hard time, sometimes I'll be like, so who here believes in ghosts?
When you're struggling, you're like this is my go-to.
But genuinely, I love what happens in the room because like you'll have somebody be like, oh, nah, there's too many explanations, blah, blah, blah. Somebody in the corner's like, I believe. Like they had some weird experience or their uncle did or whatever, and then suddenly we're telling stories and like the world gets bigger even if we don't understand it, which is the same thing in faith. The second that you have certainty, you no longer have faith. So uncertainty is your friend. It's what allows you to be hopeful.
Yeah, it's a good point.
It's true.
Are you a fan of The Office?
Yes.
I love this episode where Pam like believes in ghosts and Jim is giving her crap and then she's like, Jim, you're the one that like never washes your Eagles jersey because you think it's magically gonna make the Eagles win.
Superstition.
And he's like, no, I don't believe in anything like that. He's like, I just think we're doing a cool collective thing that the Eagles might hear about and want to play better.
It's so true. Like we're selective with that energy, like with our, I don't know what we want to call it, like faith, generosity or whatever. Like I'm willing to like extend some unknown over here, but no, I know this for sure. Right. It's like, dude, do you know anything? And isn't kind of the whole world more magical if you admit that you don't really know anything and you're willing?
Well, I love that they call UFOs because it's literally just saying it's unidentified.
Yeah.
And it happens to be flying.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
It's not, I think people say UFOs and people think, oh, aliens.
Totally.
But like a UFO just means it's unidentified.
It's true. I just heard Hank Green talking about that a couple
really?
weeks ago. He was saying, because they've changed the term to, I think, what is it? Unidentified aerial phenomena?
Okay.
Because UFOs means aliens
Yeah,
to people now.
right.
So they had to change the word,
Yeah.
even though the original word still stands.
Yeah. That's great. Well, okay. And what is your other podcast about?
It's called The Soloists. And my friend Diana Brown and I are really just trying to create a conversation platform for people who are single and to talk about connection, singleness, belonging, how we're partnering, kind of what's going on in the world. And we specifically come from a Mormon background, but we're really hoping that the conversation feels broader than that.
Yeah.
Because I do think it's kind of about all of us and sort of what maybe people from a Mormon background might have to offer to the single community, but also honestly to partnered people too. The way we look at singleness seems to be causing people a lot of problems, whether it's because you're so terrified to be alone, you might be staying in a relationship that isn't even very healthy for you, or seeking out relationships at like a desperate level that is not healthy for you either. The hope would be that we can just break down that experience, talk about what's really going on, maybe make some of those demons in the closet a little less scary, and really look at them and say like, yeah, loneliness sucks, and grief sucks, loss sucks, rejection sucks. Yeah. But those things don't mean that your life isn't whole and worthy and that there aren't great things ahead and that you don't like basically sit with your chin up feeling like you're enough.
Right.
So
right.
I don't know. That's kind of the main goal. And
yeah, that's cool. Have you struggled with having singleness be like feeling like an overwhelming part of your identity when it almost feels like, well, this is just a tiny, tiny part of me?
Yeah. I mean, and I feel like I've been technically single. Like I've never been married before.
Right.
So I've been technically single.
Yeah, but you're in relationships.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. But technically single for so long that I feel like I've gone through all kinds of different relationships with it where like I barely thought about it and like almost forgot because I was just in flow in my life and I was just I felt like I was functioning so well in the various things I was plugged into. And then other times where I just felt like it was a demon that was so loud and screaming so loud that I felt like I couldn't be present.
Right.
But I think a lot of that just has to do with.
And you like the paranormal, so you probably enjoyed it.
I love demons.
Good.
I'm kidding.
It's great to hear.
What about you?
What about me?
Yeah, what about you with feeling like singleness was overly defining you, I guess?
I think I'm usually good with it. Like I feel like personally I'm at a good place with it, but when I struggle is when I feel like other people are just like single. Like he doesn't get it.
Oh, that's the worst.
He's not married. He can't really relate.
Right.
And yeah, feeling like a lot of people, that's the main thing they want to talk about when we catch up or when we see each other is, are you dating anybody?
Who are you dating?
You know?
When are you going to fix that single problem? You know? Like it's a problem.
It's tough because I'm very open with the people that I'm close with in my life, but sometimes I'm like, there's just not really much to tell you until there's someone I'm like super seriously dating.
Yeah, unless you have crazy brunch stories. That's like all dating really is for me. It's
I got crazy stories for days.
I'm sure you do.
But when people ask like how's dating going, they're not saying tell me some wild war story.
I know. Most of the time they're not.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, it's another thing that's tough, like with my family. My family's deeply supportive and not pressurizing at all.
God bless them.
I know
really. They're not all made that way.
I know they're amazing.
Mine is like that too.
Yeah.
I feel lucky.
But sometimes I almost feel guilty telling them about like the early stages of a relationship because I'm like, the odds are it's gonna.
You're like, I don't want to take them on another ride.
Right. Like it's going to probably wither and perish, and so. And I don't even mean like it's the beginning of a relationship. I mean like, yeah, I've gone out with this girl 3 times and they're like, well, tell us about her. And I'm almost like.
Do you think any part of you is worried you're going to jinx it? Is that?
No, I'm not worried about jinxing. I'm more I feel bad when they follow up in 6 weeks and I'm like, I don't even know who
I forgot her name.
I don't know who you're
She's
talking
gone
about.
to me. She's dead to me.
She passed away, you know? And so I'm like, oh, it almost feels like, why even get into it?
Yeah.
But then it makes me feel like I'm being a nihilist about the whole thing.
Oh, man. I mean,
which I don't want to feel, but sometimes I'm almost like, unless I'm crazy about a girl, there's really no good information to give you. It's like, yeah, I've been on a few dates with her. I would like to have more.
yeah.
That's where I'm at. And they'll be like, well, what does she do? What does she like to, tell us about her?
They
I'm
want
like,
to picture her. They want to see you together in their heads.
That's fine. I guess I'm just kind of like, don't worry about it for now.
I mean, I think that it's such an interesting topic because I feel like single people, Diana and I talk about this sometimes. They don't get their lives aren't private, like in the way that sometimes partnered people get a certain level of privacy.
Yeah,
like you're being asked about sort of like the intimate affairs of your heart in a way where I'm like, I'm not going to walk up to somebody and be like, but how's your marriage? Like, what's the latest?
Yeah. I'll ask people about their marriage.
I will too when I'm like really close with them, but not like a random person. Whereas like somebody might ask like, how's dating going? Are you on the apps? Like what's going on there? And it can be really
I think
hard
my
to know
struggle
what to
with
say.
that question is, to me, it usually elicits a pretty long and nuanced conversation. And so I'm like, if you're just asking this in passing, I don't have anything for you.
But maybe, so you mean if somebody asks for real and they're not just like, tell us more about her. And you can feel that they're like, I want to know, where's your heart right now?
I'm like, it's a dark cavern.
Is it always a dark cavern or does it ebb and flow? Okay.
It ebbs and flows.
Okay.
Yeah. Sometimes it's in a light, meadow.
Oh.
Yeah. Rarely, but
it should be rare, or else you wouldn't appreciate it, right?
Right. If it's in a meadow for too long, she should be my girlfriend, probably. whoever we're talking about.
Wait, this is a problem. You
problem?
gotta sometimes be in the meadow by yourself.
No, but
right?
but I can be in the meadow. I'm more talking of like a very specific romantic heart.
The romantic meadow.
Yeah. We have different meadows.
I get it.
Yeah. Tell me, let's rewind. Tell me what got you into acting and that creative space. Because you do movies and TV, and you're writing and you're directing. You do comedy sketches and web series. You're kind of all over the place.
Yeah.
When did this sort of inclination start for you to get into that world?
It started. I mean, if we're just going to talk about the sorts of like shenanigans you get into as a kid, it started when I was young. Like my best friend Whitney, who I grew up with in Portland, and actually she ended up doing the sketch comedy show I was on through my 20s. She and I used to just like pull out a camcorder and record. We would just like hit record and decide what we were going to do. We would do like Guinness Book of World Records spoofs and commercial parodies, like SNL commercial parodies. We just thought it was the funniest thing, and those videos are awful and crazy, but that was kind of where it started. And I just started kind of picking up cameras more and getting more into that. And she was really into plays and stuff, and I don't think I ever would have done anything like that if it weren't for her. So it was just seeing her up on stage and thinking, well, maybe that would be fun for me too. And I auditioned for like the musicals in high school. I ended up doing broadcast journalism, honestly, on a whim.
Yeah.
There's like this great Steve Jobs commencement speech where he talks about how the dots only connect in reverse. And this is one of those things where I look back, and it was the first week of my freshman year of high school. And I was signed up for a a World of Dance class for my like art elective. And I went to that class one time, and the teacher was just so like repulsive to me. She was this woman who had taught a choir class that I was in like several years before, and I just knew her to be insane. And I was like, I don't want to be in this dance class with this person for a whole semester. And so the person in front of me was signing up for broadcast journalism, and so I signed up for the same thing.
Perfect.
And I ended up getting super into editing and like learning how to like I filmed all the plays, and then like that's what I ended up doing in college. Not actually at first even. I feel like maybe it's the Mormon background thing, but I was medicine first. I wanted to be a nurse. I didn't think any of the art stuff was realistic or very helpful. It felt very selfish. And I'm not saying that it is, but that's just the way that my brain approached it. So I saw that my friend Whitney, again, auditioned for this sketch comedy group and they needed a videographer. And I was like, oh, I guess I can do that. I did all that stuff in high school and I don't have any friends yet at school. So I'll sign up to be the videographer. And then filmed all the sketches and got super into making these little video packages for the shows. And I loved putting up those sketches and hearing the crowd laugh and then tweaking the edit based on like, oh, they might not be able to hear the end of this joke, so I need to make them to put more space there, and learning from crowd to crowd. It just taught me so much. And then I auditioned the following I auditioned the following semester, and then I changed my major to film, and it was just over.
Okay, yeah.
And what I guess I came to at that time was that I was really going into medicine because I love people. I love them so much. And I had a brother who was really sick growing up, and so we were in and out of the hospital quite a bit. And I think I just felt like that was the most obvious way to be helpful to people. And then I got so lit up by it, doing all the sketch comedy stuff and the videos, and being with that group of people. In particular, like these wonderful friends, and they were just so collaborative, and the way they were working was like intoxicating to me. It felt so egoless most of the time. Like people were pitching things, but it was so much about like whether the crowd was understanding it. And it felt like it was something very different than anything I'd done before. And so I just ended up kind of making a deal with God almost, like, I feel like I might help more people if I'm happy, and this makes me so happy. And so
I think that's a great point with any area of life or any person that's struggling to know what to do. I think you're just your best self if you're happy, and you're more capable of spreading that light and putting good things into the world if you're a happy human along the way.
Yeah, and then stuff just starts to unfold when you actually pursue. I mean, they often say, like, if you're struggling with the blues, that one of the things you can do is reach into like, what did you used to do as a kid that you're not doing anymore? And that's essentially what I was doing. You know, I was like whipping out a camera and making funny videos with my friends, which I was thinking like I would grow out of and I shouldn't do anymore. And then it became my job for a long time. Because essentially that sketch comedy group became a show called Studio C on BYU TV with all those same people, or a lot of them at least. And then that became like a training ground for a lot of different creative and collaborative skills that I've developed since. And so I'm super grateful to it. And it's all just because you just follow the scary feeling of, because it's not like, I would not just say like, oh, the life of an artist is so straightforward, I recommend it to everyone, and act like it's not, like it's some kind of guarantee that you're going to end up with money or stability or anything like that. But I can guarantee that pursuing things that you feel called to will lead you somewhere that feels like you're supposed to be there.
100%.
That you're going to find something for you in that.
Yeah. You know what's interesting about like childhood and adolescence is I feel like when you're really young, adults around you are always encouraging you to do anything you want and to be creative. And you want to be a painter, right? And you want to be an architect, be an architect. If you want to go to the moon, go to the moon. If you want to believe we went to the moon, believe we went to the moon. But once you're an adult, all of a sudden the adults around you are like, no, you need to get a steady like job with a salary and insurance, and you need to like do a practical major, and you need to, you know, do these things. And all of a sudden your dreams can die. And I just find it curious because both groups are adults, you know, giving the advice, but, you know, to a kid, they're like, yeah, you can do anything. And as an adult, they're like, well, don't do art. That's not,
you can't do that.
That's not under the umbrella of anything.
Well, would you say that that pain is particularly potent for a Mormon man? You know, somebody who comes from a background that's like, you're supposed to raise a family. You have to support them. It's your job.
I haven't felt that myself.
I love hearing that. I love hearing that. I think that's great.
I mean, my parents are artistic.
Maybe that helps too.
Yeah. And so I think my dad always championed what I wanted to do and was like, never once was like, well, you should maybe think about this or a
Right.
backup plan.
More
And
practical, logical.
I don't know that for me personally, I'm sure it's affected other people. I don't know that my like spirituality or my like general religious ethos had anything to do with my career goals.
I think that's great.
Yeah. Yeah.
You bring up a good point, though. It's like, what is that we feel like kids are allowed to explore, and that at a certain point you should stop exploring and you should like calcify into something more solid or steady, when in reality there's something about going on a trip or taking a class that opens your mind in a way that makes you feel more alive. It's like we need to be accessing that childlike energy all the time, but for some reason we call it irresponsible or something.
Right.
If it's in the wrong package, at least. Maybe
Yeah.
people are more accepting of going on a trip or taking a class, but not necessarily pursuing, I don't know, a formless life of an artist.
Right.
Which can really freak people out. I know it's freaked me out a bit sometimes.
Here's the great irony to me, though, is to me being an artist, being a creative person, a content creator, whatever, to me it's really no different than like doing a startup or like being an entrepreneur. You have high risk, high reward.
Sure.
Right? You're doing all this work hoping that it turns into something, right? Because an entrepreneur, when they start a restaurant, they're not.
Oh, sure.
They're losing money for a while, and a lot of businesses like that. But that's somehow okay. But if you want to like move to New York and go to art school and become a painter, all of a sudden you're like, well, that's too high of a risk.
It's interesting there. I mean, I guess I'm probably oversimplifying, but it seems like a lot of entrepreneurial efforts are, it's sort of like, I'm trying to solve this problem. We've never had something like this. I see that there's like this issue and I'm going to create Uber to fix it or whatever. But art is doing something else. It's more like,
it's fixing a hole in your heart.
Yeah, in your heart that maybe connects other people too, and maybe won't connect people in a way that makes you money, but it definitely could connect you more to life. It's a different kind of gamble, but I do think they're both gambles. I think you're right.
Yeah. I think the tough part is a lot of times creative people aren't necessarily also good at business and good at good at finances and stuff, and so that makes their journey a little harder.
Sure.
And a little, maybe the risk a little bit higher. And some artists get so, there's this weird balance where you don't want your art to be confused with commerce. Right? You want your art to be your art.
Are you talking about Rick Rubin here? Because that's a great book.
Yeah. But like if you, but there has to be some sort of balance, right? Like you want your art to do well and become commerce and generate money and generate things for you. But if all you care about is the commerce and all you care about is the money, then I think you're going to struggle.
Yeah, you can't really make, I mean, that's Rick Rubin's argument, right? That you can't, if you're either making art or you're making commerce. And the second that you start to be more concerned about what other people think, it's commerce, right? Because it can't be pure art if it isn't like you digging into that really specific lava pain point, honesty, mystery, whatever it is you like to call it, that like makes you obsessed with a project, And I think that, finding that balance. I mean, I feel like he and Elizabeth Gilbert maybe both said this in their books on creativity, that like you shouldn't quit your day job for that reason. They like recommend to not make the art need to be sustained by the commerce per se, because it's such a heavy weight to put on your pure thing.
Yeah. And these days I feel like an artist, whether you want to or not, you kind of need to be good at marketing as well.
So worst.
Same
with dating. It's not fair.
Yeah, dating is self-marketing.
So much marketing, and they're not necessarily, like, good marketing is not necessarily the same thing as character. Very aware of that in the dating apps.
Sure. Yeah. What has been your experience with the dating apps? Has it been, is it 2 stars? Is it 1 star?
I mean,
can I guess?
Oh my gosh, guess, please.
Okay. Here's my guess. My guess is every few months you'll get emboldened, you'll be a little discouraged, your friends will encourage you, whatever the reasons, and you'll be like, all right, I'm re-downloading Hinge, Bumble, etc., whatever. And then you will find an influx of messages and matches, and you will become overwhelmed, and you will delete the app again, and you will maybe have hung out with one, maybe two guys.
Okay. To be fair.
Is this accurate?
No, it's not accurate, but there's some really, like, overwhelm is a big part of my problem.
Yeah.
I have ADHD, as most artists do.
Mm-hmm.
And so I do think that's a big issue for daters. I think, like, if you have too many options, you start to just panic and like get paralyzed. It's it's like a full-time job somehow, like talking with this many people at once and coordinating them in your schedule and figuring out what you're going to be doing with all of them, and if you should even talk to them all at once. It's like very overwhelming. But I haven't deleted the apps in a minute. I don't use Mutual anymore. I haven't used that in years. But I've been on Hinge for probably, I don't usually delete them. I just let them sit there and rot. So that's probably one of the differences.
Okay.
But it's barely a difference.
Yeah.
But lately I've been using them a lot more regularly. I think because LA is kind of a tough city in some ways. And so it's nice to, maybe this is not the best way to think of it, but lately it's been like, well, I just need to get like, I'm like a, I don't know. I'm a fun, momentum. Sexy woman in the world. Right. I need like to reamp this energy every once in a while when I'm like just in a work hole. I'm editing something for like 8 days and I showered 2 of those days. Sure. You know what I mean? And so there's something about like approaching it with less pressure about finding a partner and more about just trying to create a flow of energy in my life and remind myself that that's still a potential, and there's still something about like easing back on that has helped me with some of the overwhelm, and also just I try to stick to 3. Like I talk to 3 people at once, and if there's more than that on the Lazy Susan, I will give up. I'll play dead. Play dead. Okay. It's too many. It's too many for Mallory.
That's fair.
I can't handle it. So that's about how many people I can handle talking to at once.
Makes sense.
And then if a front runner emerges, the other ones the other ones fall back.
What are once you start like going out with guys, what are like a few things that you're like, these are the ingredients to make me fall for a guy?
I feel like at this point in my life, I'm only looking for, genuinely only really looking for like 2 solid qualities. Okay. But they encapsulate quite a bit. So maybe you're going to think this is, I'm like cheating. But to me, it's like someone who's genuinely kind. I can feel them being kind to everybody. It's not just me. And it's not just like a performance, but they're talking to people. They don't need to be like an overt extrovert, but when they're generous with people. And then someone that I can have fun with. We actually laugh together. Finding the 2 at the same time is so hard.
Kind and you enjoy.
You can find this has been my experience, and I only have like my like tiny little sample size of the world, so I'm not trying to make blanket statements about men. But in my experience, I've often found men that I'm like, this is so much fun, completely unsustainable, and you might be a bad person.
Right.
Or so much kindness, but like we're not connecting on more of like the personality. I consider it a spiritual level personally. Like laughter to me is like we're wired for joy, and we're laughing together and we're making each other laugh. And it doesn't even need to be like we're both comedians. It's like we're watching something together and it's making us giggle, and we're enjoying each other.
And there's a level of silliness and playfulness.
It's so important to me that being able to access that energy. I don't really even feel like I can access like my sexuality without it.
Good.
I feel like it shuts down if I'm not allowed to be silly. I can't just be like a sexy lady. I need to be able to be silly too.
The silly and sexy go hand in hand.
I think they do. I think they do. And I think especially because it kind of brings your walls down and you can like relax. That's so much of it, you know. What about you? I want to hear everything.
You want to hear everything? I'll tell you everything.
Tell me about your experience with the apps, and then tell me what you feel like you're looking for.
Yeah, my experience, I will say this. Men's experience on the apps are very different.
Yeah, well, and also depending on your attractiveness. Like I've heard that like the top 10% of men are getting like 90% of the swipes, and everybody else is like
getting I've talked to a lot of guys that are like, I tried the apps, I didn't get any matches.
No matches.
See
that? Screw these apps.
and it's like, here we are, like, girls think guys are so shallow, you know.
Oh, sure.
But girls.
But literally, like, the system is rigged for us to be shallow. Like it's an awful. I wish there was a better way. Yeah. But I'm willing to use the tools of my time. That's what I've told myself. Yeah. That it's like, I'm here in the world. It's 2025.
I just tell people that are like so against the dating apps. I'm like, that's fine if have great other sources for meeting people.
Yeah, you go into classes,
but if you're complaining about not having a big enough pool, not having enough looks, then the apps are only going to increase that. And I always am like, because when people are like, oh, I've only met weirdos and losers and blah, blah, blah. I'm like, you'll have the same experience out in the real world.
Sure.
Like, it's hard to find a good connection.
Yeah.
Whether you meet them online or in person.
Right.
And I always say it's like meeting someone on the apps, you're essentially going on a blind date, but you set it up. Pretty
much. So that's what it feels like.
Yeah. Like I'd much rather that than somebody else setting me up.
Yeah. I think that's fair.
Yeah. So for me, the apps, I've always been like, they're probably not my best resource, but they're a decent one. And like, who am I to like push away some girl that might want to go out with me?
I mean, isn't that okay? I go back and forth between that being like a total magic killer for me, because there's something about that phase at the beginning of a new relationship with somebody, and I don't mean romantic even yet, where you're like, oh, do we both like each other or not? That's gone from apps. Like, they're gone because you're starting knowing that you both think each other are attractive.
But that's kind of nice.
Exactly. So there's like two sides to it. And I go back and forth because part of me is like, oh, that's kind of sad that part's gone. But the nice thing is that especially for anybody who might be experiencing anxiety about it, they can be like, well, this person wanted to meet me. And also, if they ghost me, it's not that personal, actually, because they wanted to meet me. So I know that I already have an in, but it's not such a deep in that I need to feel bad if it doesn't go well. Like, they barely know me, or we never end up meeting up. There's there's no need to take offense from someone not wanting to meet a profile. Like, you're not a person to them yet.
Yeah, I've had girls that I've like rematched with years later, and we've ended up going out. And it's not like I was like, well, what happened the first time? I'm just like, she probably met somebody else. You know what I mean?
Yeah, or like got sick or went on a long trip. Like, anything could happen.
Or let it rot like you do.
I do let it rot sometimes. I have to.
I know.
It's a part of my process. But every once in a while, guys, you can feel them get butthurt and delete you because you don't respond fast enough. It's like, that's okay. Butthurt's not a respectful term. I'm sorry. I'm sure they're just trying to cut down on their overwhelm too.
Yeah, they might be hurt in the hindquarters.
Maybe.
Yeah. Yeah. What was the other question?
The other question is what you're sort of looking for.
Oh, yeah.
When you're meeting these women.
I like your two-pronged thing. I think for me that feels a little overly simplistic.
Sure.
Because there's a few other things that I also need, but I would say, like we were talking about this earlier, like, to me, the number one thing is personality, and that obviously encompasses, so many things. But I also feel like there needs to be an intellectual connection. And it doesn't even mean like I'm smarter or she's smart. Like, it just means that
stimulating.
We're kind of on the same plane.
Oh, sure.
And the conversations are, to me, stimulating and challenging, and I don't want to feel like I'm a robot ever.
Say more about that. I love that.
That's honestly something I think about a lot.
Oh my gosh. You're worried you're a robot?
No, I'm
You don't want to
not
feel
actually.
like a
I don't
robot.
want to feel like I'm not actually a human being living life,
Okay.
you know? And some people you're around, they check a lot of boxes because they're impressive people.
Yeah.
They have a great job, they're talented at this, they do this well, they're attractive, but they don't necessarily make me feel like a human, you know? Our conversations lack a certain depth. Our level of silliness and banter and playfulness lacks a certain quality. And so it's almost like they don't bring a lot of negative things to the table. It's just they don't make me feel sort of alive.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
And that makes me want to die.
Yeah.
when I don't feel that alive.
You should feel alive
Yeah.
because you are.
And sometimes it's frustrating because that's sort of the main catalyst that maybe when people say like, I don't know what it is, it's just I don't feel it with somebody. A lot of times that's it. It's like they're great and I enjoy a lot of things about them and I think they're an awesome person, an awesome human, but for whatever reason, you know, compare it to this person, when I'm with this person, I just feel alive and I feel like, okay, this is a good example. I'm doing like these, you know, these dating coaching, right?
So cool.
And relationship coaching. And I talked to this guy last night and he was telling me about sort of the love of his life, right? And I'm like, well, tell me everything.
Previous love of his life? Current love of his life?
He's in the middle of a roller coaster, right? It's been
Oh
on,
my gosh.
it's been on again, off again.
Thinking about you,
right?
sir.
Yeah. But I love what he said. He said, when I'm with her, it feels like every Christmas morning I've ever had combined times 100.
Wow.
And I love that because I'm like, there are certain people when you're with, there's almost a giddiness, you know, to being with them and, oh, I'm going to go see them tonight. And then there's certain people that you're like, it's not a bad thing. They're not like, they don't suck. I just don't have that feeling. It doesn't feel like Christmas morning when I'm with them. It feels like St. Patrick's Day.
And who cares about St. Patrick's Day?
It feels like President's Day. It's like
President's Day that's pretty harsh.
It's, you know, it's a good weekend off, whatever. You know, it's you know, it's a party, but it's not Christmas.
Sure.
Yeah.
Are you talking about the spark, or is this something else?
I think it's spark adjacent. I think maybe I don't have a great personal definition of what a spark is.
Yeah.
For me, it is, yeah, if a person makes me feel more alive. And so maybe that is a spark.
Well, yeah, I'm curious because I feel like the spark it's helpful language to try and break down something that I think sometimes fades really fast or something that can like develop and grow. That would be my question is like, is this a thing that you've experienced like long-term over the course of a longer relationship? Like this person feels like Christmas always.
Yeah.
Hell yeah for that person.
Right.
And for you. That's great.
But I mean, here's the thing. Like, if we want to like have this be a protracted metaphor, like Christmas Day also ebbs and flows.
Yeah.
You know, like there's the beginning that's kind of the most exciting and you're opening presents and everyone's together and blah, blah, blah. And then sometimes there's kind of lulls and you take a nap and you have lunch and then, but then you're back and you're playing with your presents and your nieces and nephews are over and it's just a magical day. Right.
Yeah.
But it's, you know, it's still, there's good and bad that come with it.
Yeah.
You know, it's not perfect and it's not like, I guess I don't love the word spark because it does feel like something that will fade quickly.
Yeah, something that goes off at the beginning.
It feels almost superficial. And I've also been with girls like that where it does feel like there's this almost electricity and there's this weird cosmic energy going on. I don't know what it is.
I don't know what that is either, but I wouldn't call it always good.
Right. And
what you're describing sounds more like what some people might just generally call a connection.
Yeah. Yeah. And so, yeah, I think sometimes in the early stages, it's hard to pinpoint.
Yeah.
You're just like, I don't know. I just feel good. I like it.
Yeah. Like I honestly, like, the question I would love to hear the questions you ask yourself when you're trying to decide if you should go on another date or end the relationship or continue it. But I often just feel like if I'm still feeling curious, I'm staying. Like, if there's something that's still making me lean in and I'm still looking forward to seeing what that is, even if it's not like I'm so excited to see him, but it's like, I like want to know more.
I read this study and they said the most common factor for what correlated to people falling in love was obsessive thinking.
Obsessive thinking?
Obsessive thinking. Not necessarily in a negative connotation of like you're being obsessive, but just that you are thinking about them all the time. That was a key indicator that you're falling in love with somebody.
Are we talking about like the Helen Fisher, your brain on cocaine kind of love? Or are we talking about...
No.
Man, wait, that feels like a crazy bar that I'm like, oh, I'm not sure. I'm trying to process that.
But I mean, like, but I mean, think about the people you've fallen for. Like, when you have fallen for them, aren't they kind of on your mind all the time?
It's true. Sometimes I will admit this, and I feel a little shame saying it out loud, but sometimes I don't totally trust my experience because I do feel like I've had some really powerful connections in my life and they haven't resulted in a long-term partnership. Like, they haven't resulted in a marriage is what I'm saying. And that feels hard. There are times where I'm like I would say I've been in love 3 times. And
I would say the same thing.
I feel so lucky, honestly. And those connections were...
Well, 2.5.
Intense.
I'm just kidding.
2.5. One of them was more like President's Day.
We'll give that one Easter. That was pretty darn good.
It was pretty good. You got like to do an Easter egg hunt, and there was a chocolate bunny. But like, I don't even know if I should be aiming for that level of connection anymore. Not because it doesn't exist, but because maybe that wasn't exactly the goal. Maybe I had those really vibrant connections, but I can trust that. And it's not that I'm like settling or looking for something totally different, but thinking that it has to be that feels a little scary to me. I'm not really sure. I have some other friends I've talked with about this, like, especially I think sometimes like really passionate or artistic people, it's, you know, there's like so much color and like I feel so hard, you know, like highs and lows. And so that intensity, I don't know if it's sometimes people think it's like getting caught up in the drama or something like that, or the story or whatever. I wouldn't call any of like the times I've felt those connections anything but like, because a lot of them were like tested over time. But I don't like, I genuinely don't know what to do with them sometimes other than feel grateful. That feels clearest. And then to be open to my future surprising me and letting people surprise me. But I'm nervous about aiming for Christmas Day. Personally, it makes me nervous.
Yeah, that's fair.
It scares me.
Yeah. I can resonate with that fear, I guess, but I'm just not interested in anything else.
That's a good point.
Yeah.
It crossed my mind too as you were talking. It's like, regardless of whether or not someone might think that that's realistic to aim for or not, what are you supposed to do? Like, violate your gut and all your instincts?
Well, and here's the thing, like, I've felt it multiple times. How come I can't feel it again?
Yeah.
You know? And because to me, okay, this is maybe pretty similar to that spark or that connection, that magical, ineffable quality. But for me, when I find that I'm really starting to fall for somebody and there's something different about them, it's that I just kind of, even with all their weaknesses and like obvious shortcomings, I just like everything about them. You know what I mean? Like, I like the way they talk. I like the way they dress. I like the way they enunciate things a little bit incorrectly sometimes. All their little things to me become endearing and cute. And it's almost a mystery in human chemistry. Like, why did that person do it for me? You know? But they just did. And I know what that feels like versus me being like, yeah, they check all these great, lovely boxes, but I almost find myself trying to talk myself into being with them or dating them or liking them more than I currently do. And that doesn't feel good.
Yeah. At a certain point, I feel like it was helpful for me to just admit that I was looking for something that might be rare.
100%. I know for a fact I'm looking for something deeply rare, and it's a horrible corner I've backed myself into.
But where else are you supposed to go? Like sometimes when people talk about the idea of being too picky, I mean, does that come up in your life?
Probably every day, but
for you or for people coming at you? You know what I mean?
People coming at me. I mean, I've wrestled with it myself, right? Trying to be self-honest and be like, am I too picky?
You're single for long enough and you're like, I don't.
And the problem with when you've been single for millennia or so,
sure,
it's hard because you have been with incredible people.
Yeah.
Right. And even like, there's been some girls I've met that I've been out with 2 or 3 times that were unbelievable and maybe even better in my brain because I didn't see.
Oh, sure.
I didn't see past
of a crush.
Yeah, I didn't see any of their bad sides, you know, and so it's easy to have in your head this amalgamation of a perfect human, and to be like, well, I can achieve that because I've been with this girl that was this smart. I've been with this girl that was this attractive. I've been with this girl that was a spiritual giant. I've been with, you know, and you're like, so can I not have this?
You can't Frankenstein a woman.
No,
you can't.
No, you sure can't. but again, I can also look back and be like, okay, these 2-3 girls I've been in love with and I've felt like were everything I wanted. They exist.
Yeah.
And I had success with them. Yeah. You know, they weren't just, they exist, but they're unattainable, you know? And so I always tell people are so picky about everything in their life. Like, I'm phrasing this wrong. People settle on so many areas of their life. I'm like, I'm fine to settle with what kind of car I drive, the size of my home. I'm down to settle with where I live. Maybe it's not ideal for me. I'm down to settle with, I want 3 or 4 kids, but maybe my wife only wants 2. I'm down to settle. What I'm not down to settle with is the person I live the rest of my life with and what I believe to be also the eternities.
So I guess a partner question with that, does that mean that you would prefer to be alone?
Yeah, than to settle.
Yeah. So there's like some peace being made with a possible existence on your own if that experience and that level of connection doesn't arrive.
Right. But I also believe this. I believe the better version of myself that I am, the more I'm able to attract.
Sure.
And so I will continue to work on myself and make myself a more attractive human. I mean, the vessel, this is about as good as it's going to get, but, you know, I can go to the gym a little more often, but
the vessel's so little. I feel like once the vessel's the vessel, it's the vessel.
Sure.
What else are you going to do?
Sure. I'm just joking, but but yeah, I think I tell people, like, I think you should be as picky as you can, but be self-honest about how picky you can actually be.
Oh, I mean, unpack that. You mean self-honest as in like your context in the world?
Like, I think you should be able to, like, whatever you bring to the table in a relationship, in all categories, you should be able to aspire to have those same things in a partner. You know? So if you're X amount attractive, you should be able to get that same caliber of attraction. If you're this smart, you should be able to be with somebody that smart.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't know. I feel like.
But also realizing, like, you also bring certain liabilities as a potential dating person.
Yeah.
Right? And so you have to weigh those into the equation, you know?
And I think it's hard to be, it's hard to know what your level of attractiveness is, and like I've always hated the term like she's out of my league, or he's out of my league.
Yeah.
I feel like it's so elitist, and Are we really talking like there are some people that are better than others? Are there some people who might have won the genetic lottery that like allows them to maybe like succeed in certain areas faster? Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
But the idea that like someone is too good for you, or someone is like that you're too good for them, I just find it so like, I just don't want to live that way. I don't want to feel that way all the time.
I really don't like when, I feel like it's often the narrative that like a guy will say that, like, well, yeah, I was batting out of my league and I got her, and I'm like, okay, like, sorry you feel so poorly about yourself.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like I hear it from both,
Yeah.
like both men and women, this idea like, oh, you know, like he was out of my league or I shouldn't be talking to him. And the other way, like I've just heard it all over the map. And I don't know, I remember, did you ever play that game? Like, who could you pull? It was basically like, if you were at a party and you met a celebrity, who could you pull? Like, I think I could pull this person from The Office or whatever. I could get Dwight Schrute. I could get Dwight Schrute, you know, or whatever. And I have a friend who was like, anyone. I could pull anyone.
Yeah.
Like, there is nobody I couldn't pull if the vibes were right.
Right.
And I guess I'd prefer to, like, versus thinking about it as like, I don't know, like finding like somebody on my level. I'm like, what if I could just say it could be anybody? And I'd love it if everybody felt that way. Yeah. You know what I mean? Do you think that's dangerous?
I would go back to, okay, if you're that supremely confident, that's great. But let's look at your track record. Have you been able to pull kind of the people you want to? You know?
What if the answer is yes?
Then great.
Go for it.
Continue to pull so very hard.
But if you can't, then the idea is like, what's the helpful thing for a person who's like, I could pull anybody. I could pull Scarlett Johansson at a party or whatever. And it's like, well, maybe you can't. What's the helpful instruction there? Because it feels like,
I would say, yeah, look at your past. Look at, you know, line up all the girls you've been with.
Shoot.
and ask yourself, do any of them resemble Scarlett Johansson? You know, have you, like, yeah, just be honest with yourself. What kind of girls are you usually dating?
Well, what if it's not a lot? Then it's just like you need to go gather data.
Probably. Yeah.
It's tricky. It's so hard for me to not feel like, I know it's probably like, I don't know, kind of eye rolly, but I just find it all so, it can be just so shallow and sad to me.
Sure.
And I just like, maybe I'm just too soulful, but I'd like to believe that it's more spiritual than we think and that there's even more biological than we think.
Yeah.
I find like the idea that it's more biological and it's not as much about like the way that we're measuring up literally on paper. Like, oh, this person's measurements and how they look. Like, I'd really like, that's just the way I prefer. It's definitely the way I prefer to approach it personally. Because the idea, especially as a woman, that I'm supposed to meet like a certain type of beauty ideal in order to have a better chance. And that actually maybe my body is responsible for all of the shortcomings in my life. In my dating life, there's a little fuzz.
Yeah, good. Ladies and gentlemen, she's hallucinating.
I do have ADHD, I'm so sorry. Anyway, it's like, I've decided that I'm just not gonna, I just don't think I'm gonna go there with myself anymore. Like, I'm gonna try to be more gentle about it. Because I think I did spend some years believing that like, if I were more beautiful, I wouldn't be single. Or if I were more conventionally feminine in some ways, or if I weren't so outspoken or whatever, or so myself, that if I had like somehow fit into a more acceptable box, but that just feel like it's the absolute wrong way to get a partner that actually loves you in the end.
It's just not really true.
How so?
I don't think those things just kind of dictate probably what kind of person likes you and is interested in you, and doesn't dictate the fact that whatever relationships you've had haven't worked out. Because to me, it sounds like, obviously I don't know you very well, but to me it sounds like your issue hasn't been like, I can't meet guys, or I have no success with men. Your issue is you've had relationships that haven't worked out, right? And those relationships that haven't worked out probably have nothing to do with your whatever lack of, things that feel like maybe shortcomings, or things that have felt like have maybe you've been pigeonholed in some way. Does that make sense?
It does make sense.
Yeah.
I feel like it's just the whole subject always comes down to, I mean, how faithy do you get on this podcast? You get pretty faithy?
As long as we want to.
As faithy as you want?
Yeah.
I feel like the question almost always becomes, for me, just do you really believe that you would be married if God want you married?
Mm-hmm.
Wanted you married?
Yeah.
And if you really believe that, then can't you have like full peace that
mm-hmm.
whatever is flowing toward you is grace, regardless of whether or not the package is exactly what you were expecting or hoping for at this point in your life? And that's how it feels for me when I start to be like, am I too picky? What do I need to change? Is it something about myself? Or is it something about my approach? Is it something about the state of the world and like where men and women are at on like the political spectrum or whatever it is? It's like there's so many different ways that I could be like, I'm going to game this out and I'm going to control this.
Yeah.
And obviously I can't.
Yeah.
I obviously can't.
Right.
And so I don't know. Lately I've just been like, I think I might just try and relax, enjoy myself, and not forget that like, I think like sometimes the mistake, well, I wouldn't even call it a mistake. Like sometimes when people stop dating or they quit dating, I think it can be the right thing for them.
Yeah.
But I think for me right now, I feel like dating as sort of like like I was saying, sort of keeping my energies balanced.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And I'm like comfortable lately with the idea that maybe that's what I do the rest of my life.
Yeah.
I just meet strangers.
Yeah.
I flirt with them. We have fun.
Right.
And maybe it goes somewhere and maybe it doesn't. And I appreciate lots of different relationships of shapes and sizes, but maybe I'm not called to a long-term partnership. I have no idea.
Yeah.
But that openness is helping me relax.
Yeah. I like that. What do you do? This is a hard question, darn it.
You can take your time. There's no rush. I'm going to get a drink.
No, it's easy to ask. It's hard to answer.
Oh, no. I should be nervous.
Yeah, you need
I'm going to take my drink.
Yeah, you take your drink. I'm fine over
no.
here. I was just, my sigh was trying to prepare you. I know. What sort of emotional resources do you go to when you have a broken heart? What do you do to get over it, to move forward?
Emotional resources.
Yeah, what's your game plan? How do you recover from a destroyed heart?
I'm trying to think about, I feel like, I mean, I was just, because there's like, I feel like almost every true thing is true on the micro and the macro. Mm-hmm. So like at some point during the day, almost every day, I feel like I take in like a gasp and realize my heart is totally broken in a way where it's just like my life is not what I thought it would be, and I'm so brokenhearted about it. And then there's that's the more of like the micro experience. The more macro experience is like my heart is literally broken by this person, like I've lost this person in my life, or the life that I thought I might have. And I think in both of those scenarios, my like biggest tool is it would definitely be my relationship with God, because I for me, it's helpful to believe that everything could be love, that even the things that I don't understand could be love. Like I love the idea that a tragedy from God's perspective is almost never tragic. Like when you really think about it, we talk about people like they're winners and losers, but long view, is there such thing as a winner or a loser? Like you can win a race and then like you peaked and the rest of your life is really hard because you won that race, you know, or you can spend your whole life losing and you develop so much grit that you become just the best person to hang out with. You know what I mean? So like, what is a winner and what is a loser and what is a tragedy? And I think like really like asking to be held in those moments, you know, really, really asking to be held by something bigger and wiser than me. Picturing myself in the lap of like the divine feminine or heavenly mother or Jesus Christ for me. Jesus is such a helpful figure. Sometimes I feel like whether or not people like to think of him in a literal way, what a helpful dude. Such a helpful thing to have somebody who's pointing to God, who was an actual human, because God can be so ineffable and so difficult to access, and to have somebody really saying like, I get it. It's awful.
Yeah.
So yeah, I would say God is the biggest one, but it's not the only one for sure. I feel like so often my body just needs to move.
Yeah.
It's like walking or yoga. I love distance running. I have an Achilles injury right now, and it is killing me.
Yeah.
But I feel like I feel like there's something very healing about just remembering that you're alive, like you were saying earlier. Just knowing like your heart is broken, but it'll heal.
Yeah.
And also, I just feel like sometimes I feel like in the moments in my life when I feel the most alien, like, how did I get to this spot? How did I end up in this desert? What is wrong with me that I got here? There's this, I remember the first time I lost someone really, really close to me, I remember hearing that like grief is a club you'd never want to join, but that it like will connect you to all the other people in the club for the rest of your life. And I think sometimes just reminding myself that this broken heart, this alien feeling is actually the thing that will make me feel most connected to people.
Yeah.
And often the thing that people like, there's nothing like, you know, talking to somebody who has a broken heart and your eyes fill up with tears just because you know how it feels and theirs do too.
Yeah.
And you're just like, I can't say that I understand your experience completely, but I hope you feel known.
Yeah.
And I hope you feel less alone.
Yeah.
And I feel honored to be able to do that. So sometimes like cashing in on those feelings and those moments and reminding myself like this broken heart is worth it.
Yeah.
I'd rather be a part of the human race, you know, than like never have a broken heart.
Yeah. 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 It's funny. To me, if I like am talking to somebody and I hear they're going through a heartbreak, to me, I take that way more seriously than like they just lost their job or a hurricane just went through their town. I'm just like, oh, so this is serious.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
And it's a beautiful way to connect.
It really is.
Yeah.
And it's fast. Like sometimes we were talking earlier before we started recording about how it can be really tricky when you can feel like people's walls in a social situation. But man, if you're getting into that brokenhearted space, like there's just like nothing, there's no walls in there.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's not going to happen.
Right. There's this quote I want to read to you that I can't remember off the top of my head. So this was by Leonard Cohen. And he said, the older you get, the deeper the love you need. Do you believe that?
The deeper the love you need.
Yeah.
Oh, man, I wish I didn't, but yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, I feel like I need it, but I also can give it. I have so much more space.
Yeah.
I feel like my arms are just wider than they used to be. And I just feel like every time I've been like obliterated, I just like got bigger.
Yeah.
And it feels so good to be able to hold people, you know, but I feel like, so I need that depth. I crave it. And I feel like sometimes like if somebody can't like go in, like if they just keep things surface level or if we can't like go into the deep end, I tend to feel a little bit like, I don't know. I think I can feel there's just a sense of loss, I guess, like an ambiguous loss, that I wouldn't say is necessarily overtly sad, but
but you're like, darn it, I wish you could go there with me.
Always.
Yeah.
That's all I ever want anywhere I go.
Right.
Pretty much.
Yeah.
That's like pretty much what I'm looking for all the time. Like I would say that the fronts in LA are pretty thick. I might that's just my experience.
Yeah.
But you know, you go to a lot of parties where people are either trying to be very, very hot or rich or really successful and they really want everybody to know that they're legit. And it's just like could not be further from what we're discussing.
Right.
And my little I love to take like a little blowtorch and often it's because of like I've gone to those parties sometimes not feeling very impressive or not having like a resume or a job that I wanted to discuss and instead like really just wanting to know like what kind of souls and hearts and bodies are in this room.
Yeah.
And I don't know, there's just something really magical that happens when you can like go deep at a party and like end up talking about somebody who just lost their grandfather and they never thought they were going to talk about that at this like networking event. Even just yesterday I had this conversation with an old coworker that I actually don't even really know very well, and he asked me a few pointed questions and I just gave him like a real raw answer because that's usually what I do. Then he started crying like at his desk.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And I was like, I'm sorry, but I love this.
Yeah. Sorry, bro. This is the reality.
I'm assuming you're similar.
Yeah. I wish I was better with sort of just yammering off platitudes.
Oh yeah, it's a skill.
I just I don't know, it kind of makes my skin crawl. Like, I'm weird because I'm very extroverted and I love people, but yeah, when I feel like we're just trading memorized phrases back and forth to each other,
sure,
I'd like to make a swift exit. Yeah.
I mean, it seems like it might line up with you wanting to feel alive, right?
Yeah.
And like not like a robot.
And I think, you know, I'm blessed to have so many really deep relationships that I'm like, I can go hang out with some friends that are going to give me that. I don't need to be here talking about nothing.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, I think that's fair.
Yeah.
I feel like I suffer from maybe the opposite problem where I'm like, this person doesn't want to go there and I'm going to hang out until they do.
Yeah.
And I feel like I used to be more panicked about the thought that I might be wasting my time. But like at some point in my 30s, I feel like I just grieved like the wife and mother thing, like maybe fully.
Mm-hmm.
Like was just like, this might not be something I get to do.
Mm-hmm.
Can I just let that go?
Yeah.
So I can just be alive.
Yeah.
And let go of the idea that like the only full life for me would involve me either being a wife or a mother or both,
Mm-hmm.
and that there was no other path forward, which is I think understandable for somebody coming from a Mormon background. But like once I kind of got, I mean, it still comes up. It's still something that I have to like re-grieve and like it's not like it doesn't hurt. The idea that it just feels so unfair that some people have those things happen in their lives and some people don't. But I do think that's part of it. It's just like, I don't.
And you're more behind the 8 ball as a woman.
It does feel that way.
Yeah.
It does feel that way. And it does feel deeply unfair. There's a kind of grief that I feel like you do as you're starting to move into like, oh, I might not be able to have children. Like, I just won't be able to have children. I have to let go of a fantasy.
Yeah.
I need, like, it will die.
Yeah.
And I actually think it's kind of gorgeous.
Yeah.
It's like I would love to let go of the fantasy anyway. I want to step into reality with somebody. I had somebody, I was talking to some guy, I can't even remember when we were talking about, I think like we were talking about like physical attractiveness and like he was bald. And I was like, I think that's great. It means that you're a human and that you're like alive and on this planet. And the point is not to be like perfect next to each other, to like basically be these two like stone images that of how we're never going to die and everything's going to go just how we want. It's like, no, can we handle reality together? Can we handle the fact that like my body like won't be able to do this and your body won't be able to do that? And to me, there's something kind of exciting about that as I'm getting older. It's really scary, but I don't know. I think there's something cool about letting go of the fantasy because the fantasy is sort of, I think it might be holding us back sometimes.
Yeah.
So why does it need to be perfect? Why can't it be messy?
And I think there's a lot of utility in just saying, okay, maybe I hold on to, you know, there's a fine line between hope and fantasy. Right?
Oh my gosh. That's a whole podcast.
Right.
Yeah.
But so I'm comfortable hanging out in that area, in that neighborhood.
Totally.
But at the same time, let me try to find beauty in every single stage of my life and in every stage of that stage, you know?
Yeah.
And so let me find beauty in my horrible days. Let me find beauty in, you know, kind of getting kicked on the ground.
Yeah.
You know? And it's so much easier said than done. Yeah. But I think if you make it a practice that like, I'm going to just seek beauty in every part of my life and I'm going to find it. And it might be hard.
But you will find it.
But yeah, I'm going to find it. Yeah. And I just think it changes your life.
Yeah. I mean, I think it's a mistake to assume that almost anything isn't beautiful. I was listening to Ellen Langer on a podcast. She's so cool. She's this like kooky mindfulness guru out of Harvard, I think. And she and Rich Roll were talking about how even like you can assume that you're in total blackness when you close your eyes, but actually when you close your eyes, there's actually sort of like a kaleidoscope of color and there's like stuff moving around. Yeah. So like even nothingness is something, like there's like substance to nothing. Yeah. And so I feel like everything is offering us something. And I love thinking about how like there's fullness in a moment that we think is empty. And I don't know, there's a lot to say for that in like the space of not getting what you want. Yeah. Which I feel like is the single person superpower. Right. It's like living in the space of not getting what you want and becoming kind of an expert on uncertainty, maybe grief as well, like especially like this sort of ambiguous, like, oh, I want to return to the fantasy versus hope thing because it's crazy. Yeah. What do you think? Like, tell me more about what you think that fine line,
how we delineate.
Yeah. What do you think the difference is?
This is hard because I'm kind of a walking contradiction here because
aren't we all?
I love words and see the utility in being impeccable with your words and using the right word, right? Okay. But I also think there's danger in getting caught up in the semantics of is it this or is it this, right? Meaning, am I holding on to hope or is this hope becoming a fantasy? To me, I'm like,
sure.
It feels like hope, so I'm not gonna
mess with it.
I'm not gonna parse it too much. I'm gonna be like, to me, that's hope. And again, this goes back to, being honest with yourself. And I think when you're honest with yourself, you can see, am I entering fantasy land or am I just holding on to hope? And in holding on to hope, I can be real with myself and say, this thing that I want so bad, it might not happen, and that's okay, but I'm going to hold on until it's an impossibility. Yeah. As long as it's possible, I'm going to hold on to hope. And I'm not going to call that a fantasy. I'm going to call it hope. And once it's impossible, then I can, the hope is gone, the fantasy is gone, whatever, I can move forward. But yeah, for me, I'm going to hold on to the bitter end.
Why wouldn't you?
Yeah.
I think I'm going to throw something on the table. What about, this is what I'm thinking. For me, I feel like hope feels more like something that it's like we all have basically one thing to offer the world, which is like our unique expression. The unique things we desire and the unique things we love and believe, mostly the unique things we love, right? And that includes the things we want that we might not have that we like purely love. And so hope to me feels like it's rooted in that. Like my unique expression as a person is that I love people and I love men and I would love a partner and that feels like unique expression. Fantasy feels like my life won't be complete without it. It feels different. Like it feels like it's more like this thing will happen, has to happen, is meant to happen
versus I hope it happens.
I hope this happens. And I like my continued like sort of, it's almost like placing it on the altar, right? Like every day I place this unique expression, this unique thing I would love on the altar. And I say, I don't know, but I feel pretty good about it. It's like, if it doesn't work, that's fine because it's just expression. It's just love. Yeah. And it doesn't reflect on like, essentially like a fantasy not coming true is going to like, it's going to hurt so bad. But a hope not coming true feels almost more like there's trust in it or something. That's just what I'm working with.
Yeah.
Paper's not written yet.
It's affecting your posture for some reason. Do you feel like, this is kind of a change of subject, but I feel like we're in the same arena. Do you feel like everything in life can be sort of an artistic act?
I think so. I think because I think it's all creative. Sometimes when people talk about not being creative, it makes me so sad.
Yeah.
Not because, and it makes me mad. Mostly because I'm just mad about the rhetoric around it. It's like, we're obviously creating this conversation. We're creating a friendship even just by having this conversation.
Yeah.
Like, you run into me on the street, I hope you say hello.
Yeah.
Because we've created a friendship. We've
Right.
created a relationship of some kind. And like, you know, like, I'll leave this room and I'll make choices, and every choice feels creative. So I would call that artistic.
Yeah.
Well, why do you ask the question? You have thoughts?
Yeah, I think it's a spectrum for sure. And I think you have to kind of like consciously think about doing things creatively.
Okay, tell me more.
Like, so you don't become a robot.
I love this robot area. That's helpful.
Just because, like, I think if you're not careful, sure, you're creating a conversation anytime you talk to somebody, but are you really creating it if you're just saying the same things you always say to everybody?
What if it's just bad art? You know what I mean?
Yeah. Then
maybe it's just bad art, but it's still art. You know, it's just like, it's just what's
really, really kitschy.
Kitschy. What's the word that people always use about art? That it's like reiterative. That it's a
camp. It's
Do you know what the word
derivative.
is? Derivative.
Yeah.
That's the one. Yeah. That's the one I'm looking for. Your art is derivative. You're using the same. Right. You're just using.
I guess that's a fair point. I guess I just don't want to make bad art.
It doesn't seem like you are.
No.
Seems like you're pretty committed to
Thank you,
your honest art. I mean, you can't necessarily. Like...
I guess I just mean to take it to another level. I don't want to make bad art in any area of my life.
Does that feel like a high standard?
No, because I'm not saying I need every area to be a masterpiece, right? I'm just saying I want to attempt good art.
Yeah.
I want to give my best, you know? And the thing I have to remember is my best changes. You know, my best today is dependent on my mental state. Yeah. It's dependent on what I'm going through, the variables around me. And so I can't compare it to my best from 3 weeks ago or 2 years ago. Yeah. You know, it's its own thing. It's almost none of its business. You know? Well,
yeah. What else are we supposed to do? And I think there's like an internal weather system inside of everybody. And I think sometimes it can feel like our circumstances are affecting it a lot more than we think. But there's also just a weather system going on. And it's very sensitive to things like sleep and food and light and play and social time. And, you know, I feel like there's no getting away from the fact that that matters when you make art. You're not going to be able to make the same thing if the well is totally empty. Yeah.
What are some things you do outside of your like very specific fields of art, you know, music, writing, acting, all these things? What are some things you do that to you really like to try and do them creatively?
I have been baking lately. I'm not amazing at it, but I love it because I think one of the reasons I love it is because I used to do it when I was a kid. So it feels and I've really struggled. I'm sure you can relate. When you love what you do and you love your job, you sometimes work like 20 hours a day. Yeah. You know, and it can be kind of toxic sometimes. I've sometimes described it as being like waterboarded by something you love. It's not the best kind of relationship to be feeling like I'm always creating and I'm editing until 4 a.m. and then I wake up and I sleep for, you know what I mean? Like I sleep for 2 hours and then I'm working, like I'm literally like my laptop's in my bed and I'm working again and I love it, but it's not. So, but at the same time, the idea that I don't have any creativity outside of my job, that like I just need to be either like laying with my face down in the ground and that's rest, or I'm creating and I get to do all this fun stuff. Yeah. I've had to find other creative outlets that felt zero stakes. And I love food for that reason. Food's great because beginning, middle, end. Totally. Like you have beginning, middle, end, often in one day. Like I do sourdough and that takes 2 days. I mean, and then the starter or whatever. But and I like the fact that I can give it as a gift. That also feels like very arty in a way that is really satisfying. It's like that always feels like almost the art sometimes doesn't feel complete until it's shared, you know? And so it's nice to give it away. And I love that it disappears.
Yeah.
It's like, oh, great, I made this thing and it's gone. And it gets to be totally like just a pure creative act. It didn't really matter. And I kind of feel like that's what it's supposed to be.
Yeah.
If I could do that with more, and I mean, sometimes I feel like it's helpful to create little metaphors like that in your life that you can apply back to your art or whatever it is you're trying to create. Like, how can I get that baking feeling when I'm working on this thing I'm writing? Because it's possible. Like it's the same engine. I'm using this engine, and somehow I'm like completely relaxed when I'm baking, to the degree where like I'll do it when I'm sick to relax. You know what I mean? So like how it's just so fun to try and figure out how to like.
Yeah, it kind of reminds me of that moment on The Secret Life of Walter Mitty, when the guy's going to take the picture and he's like, sometimes if I really enjoy a moment, I don't take it. And I just love that so much, because I'm like,
I think it's important.
The artist in you is like, oh, but you got to capture it so you have it in your catalog, and you know, because that's your art. But there's something about being so present that you're like, I'm not going to be distracted by the camera.
It feels like there's a deeper question there too. Like, are we here to just experience life? And is it okay to just sit back and experience? Like, we're so obsessed with productivity. And like that productivity feels like it's rooted in a lot of things, like capitalism, but also ego, obviously. It's just like, the more I make, the more that I am. And the more that I am, the better. But the idea that you can just sit with like a gorgeous vista and it just disappears. And you kind of do too. Like maybe even the memory of it will disappear. It's scary. It's pretty great. It's like a type of annihilation that I think we're maybe supposed to experience more. And it's a little like we're all like digital hoarders now. And I know I totally am. But we're like taking all these pictures and we're like videoing half the concert, you know? It's pretty strange.
Right. Yeah.
When you really think about it.
Yeah, it's funny. I remember I was on just this little trip with two of my buddies this last weekend, and I remember at a few moments thinking like, oh, we should get together and take a picture so we remember this. But it was almost like I didn't want to disrupt the flow of the moment that was so good by taking that picture. And depending on what you're doing, sometimes you're like, no, I really want to capture this moment and take a picture.
And it can be sweet too, to tell your friends you care. And like, I want to take a picture with my bros.
Right.
That's nice.
But yeah, it's funny. I was driving home with my roommate, and he's an artist, he's a musician. And we were talking about how our conversation the night before, we started to get into a flow state, he said, which I thought was a really cool thought, that you're three people are conversationally in a flow state, and it did become a work of art, right?
Totally.
And it's one of those things where
it's like jazz.
We were talking about how we're the kind of people that would never say during that flow state, okay guys, I seriously better go to bed now.
I gotta go to sleep.
And for better or worse, probably for the worse, but we're just like, it's one thing if you're just kind of hanging out and you're talking and you're having fun, whatever. But there are nights where the conversation is really alive and really electric. And you're like, to go to bed would be a sin. So I'm not going to do that. I'm going to bask in this moment, because they don't come around every single night.
Yeah, they don't.
Especially with people you really care about. And so I just love that he called it a flow state, because I never thought about, a conversation being sort of that way.
Well, and I've heard the definition of flow. I mean, there's some really helpful definitions of flow, so I'm wondering how you're thinking of it. Like, I've heard before that flow is when a task is just challenging enough that it's not boring, but it's not so challenging that you're not discouraged. And then also, it seems like a lot of people talk about flow as like, you go away. Right? I'm assuming that's like kind of the way you're thinking about it.
Yeah, it's almost where it's completely effortless. Right. And you're almost just relying on your muscle memory as friends or as conversers, and Because sometimes you're kind of like, the conversation's good, but you're just always sort of searching for the next topic and the next question, the next phrase.
Yeah.
And then sometimes you're just like, I could have never scripted that in a million years. We were both just,
right.
you know? And that goes back to sort of that weird quality you're looking for in a partner is, do you have the ability to have those moments of flow together?
Yeah.
Because some people you don't. And it doesn't mean you can't have good conversations, but I feel like there's another echelon of conversation that you achieve with some people and you can't with others.
I think so too. I don't even know what it is. I mean, I completely believe in soulmates.
Mm-hmm.
And I just believe that we have a lot of them.
Yeah.
And I definitely don't think it's just like a romantic category, but it just seems like there are just some people that regardless of whether or not, it's just a weird thing. I love it.
Mm-hmm.
I love anything weird. And like anything that you can't explain about human connection, I just find like it's delightful to know and to feel like there's more going on than just I'm in control of all of this and it's all going this way because of me, or it's all going this way because of me.
Yeah.
And I love that there are some people I meet and I'm just going to be friends with them forever.
Mm-hmm.
Like I made a friend in London, my friend Rosie, she's the best. And she actually even lived in Utah while I was living in Utah, and we never met, but we happened to meet in London. And then we hung out, I think 2 or 3 times while I was in town. And then we've just stayed so tight since. It wasn't like a friendship of convenience.
Yeah.
It didn't make any sense. We've like met each other in different parts of the country and like gone on trips together and cried together and gotten through lots of things together. It doesn't even make sense. Right. But she's one of my soulmates. Yeah. So it just happened. Yeah. And I just, there's something to look forward to for every living person, that you'll continue to just be like completely surprised by this soulmate level connection that pops up sometimes.
You know what's funny? You talked earlier about loving the inexplicable and the paranormal and the fantastical, right? And to me, that's kind of what love is.
It is.
Right?
That's like, why it's amazing. It's a mystery.
How do you scientifically explain love, right? You can maybe talk to a neuroscientist and be like, what's happening in the brain when you're in love? But it's like, how do you scientifically explain how you got there?
Yeah.
You know?
Well, and one of my favorite... I mean, like, there are situations. This is one reason why I feel so strongly about single people just holding their heads high and just lighting themselves up, living a beautiful life, and obviously like pursuing romantic options and everything, but not feeling like their singleness says anything about them. I just think it's a mistake to take that to heart, because there's so many situations where people, it makes no sense that it worked out. It just seems like it's a total mess. And it doesn't, how did it end up actually working into a relationship? And one of the most graceful things I've heard anybody say over the past year or so was, you can't say the wrong thing to the right person.
I believe that.
Do you believe that? Okay. Yeah. I do too. Yeah. And it feels like it could potentially be naive.
Sub-question.
Yes.
Do you believe it can be the right person but the wrong time?
To be honest, that's, I feel like, one of the ways that I've sometimes dealt with the rejection and heartbreak is that feeling like, you're not crazy. That was real. Yeah. But there's a timing thing, and wrong time means wrong person. Right. At least right now.
Yeah.
You know? Yeah. And oftentimes the door closes and it doesn't open again.
Yeah.
But yeah, I fully believe that. Do you?
Yeah. I believe if it's the right person, you make it the right time.
Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, I think I agree with you.
Yeah.
That if it's the wrong time, then yeah, I guess it's the wrong person.
It's the wrong person.
The problem is sometimes you and the other person involved aren't on the same page, you know?
Yeah.
Maybe one thinks, that was actually my last relationship. She thought we were right for each other, but it was the wrong time. And I was like, no. If we're right for each other, let's freaking make it the right time.
Yeah.
You know? But
it was the wrong time for her.
Yeah.
And so it makes it the wrong time, because it's like,
it makes it the wrong time for me, unfortunately.
It really does. But I don't know, there's like, I don't know, rejection. I think about it a lot because it's a big part of my life.
You
like,
enjoy
but
it?
oh, I love it. I'm so good at it.
Yeah.
I'm getting better at it. Yeah. Like, I mean, I pitch all the time. I'm in LA, and that's like such a big part of my life is just like having conversations and meeting people and talking about possible projects. And a lot of times it's not overt rejection. It's just like never hearing from someone again, like the career version of ghosting or not. Like, it's not even that bad. It's just like, oh, that never really materialized into anything satisfying. And sometimes it feels almost like being rejected by God, like another thing didn't work out. But it's all rejection. And I guess, what do you think rejection really is? Like, how does it, like, is it about you ever? I guess is my question.
This is nuanced because I think sometimes it is, like if you misbehave and somebody ends things with you, it was about you.
But what about you can't say the wrong thing to the right person?
Yeah, then it wasn't the right person, right?
I guess so.
Yeah.
But then the rejection just feels like God's grace. You get what I mean? It's like, is rejection God's protection, or is rejection a sign that you're doing something? I guess it's maybe a lot of things.
Yeah, for me, like, I don't look at my rejection really having anything to do with God. To me, it's just people have their free agency. People have their, like, it's funny when I'm feeling especially rejected, it feels so deeply personal, right? Oh, yeah. Because I'm like,
especially in romance.
Yeah,
like,
of course.
I showed you everything I can show a person.
Well, and it's like,
and you didn't like it, or you didn't want it, or you couldn't deal with it, or whatever.
Yeah. And you're like, those were my best moves. I gave you everything I have. I played my best cards.
Sure.
And you're still like kind of ambivalent about it, So it's hard for me. It's hard to not take that personally because you're like, they're obviously going to go date and find somebody else that they essentially like better or fit with better, or the timing's better, whatever. But it's not me. It's somebody else. So you can take it really personally and say, yeah, that's because of me. Or you can say, I like to sometimes flip it around and be like, well, there's girls I haven't wanted to be with that I've rejected that in my head, I'm like, it's not personal. It's just not a good fit.
Wonderful. Yeah.
Like they have all these things, but for whatever reason, they don't light me up like I wish they did,
The way sometimes I feel too is that like, oh, man, this like, we're talking about how like love is inexplicable. It's a weird mystery. Somebody's romantic attraction for you, it feels like we shouldn't value it as much as we do. Like, oh, if this person's not romantically interested in me, then like, I think it almost always is coming from some place of not believing that we're worthy somewhere. Because the truth is, it's like, we're like, there's romantic interest in so few people that it's actually a bigger compliment if somebody wants to be your friend, because they're like deciding that. Whereas it feels like you can't really make that it's like almost out of their hands if they're romantically attracted to you or not. It feels more like it's biological, maybe spiritual, cosmic, whatever you want to call it. But it's strange that we get caught up on it when you look at it that way. Like, it feels like we shouldn't, like it's barely even in their hands. Maybe that's the wrong way to look at it, but
it's just, it is hard to not take it so personal because it hurts so much. If you care that deeply about somebody in a romantic way and they don't feel the same, it's hard to not feel so deeply jilted.
Maybe this is like Pollyanna-ish of me, but don't you just feel like if we could all see each other perfectly, we would all be in love with each other? Like if we all had God eyes, like God view?
Well, sure. Yeah. But we also still have our preferences and our predilections, right?
It's true, but...
Because there's a lot of people that I know and have met and have seen that I think are fabulous humans. And yeah, I'm not saying I saw them with my God eyes that I recently acquired.
Right, you're seeing them with
I'm seeing them with human eyes. But I'm saying I feel like I saw all the good that they have, and I saw them fully and completely, but sometimes it still wasn't what I wanted.
It's true. But I guess what I'm trying to get at is like, if it's true that if we all had perfect, like if I could see and appreciate you from like the entirety of your being, from like all of your genetics and your ancestors, and I could like feel that on you, I feel like,
Can you feel it now?
I can feel it. I'm just saying, like, you can see how quick it gets like massive and like epic and romantic and interesting, and like how beautiful everyone is. Like if you knew everybody's like legends, you know what I mean? Everything they hold, like the multitudes that they have, you know, I feel like there's something to say for that. And so to me, it feels like rejection is about a lack of vision. Like ultimately, because I do believe that everyone's equal. I don't believe that everyone's equally attractive in the eyes of our super flawed beauty system. I don't think I don't think the way we define beauty has, I don't think it has some like corner market on beauty. I think it's actually kind of a bummer a lot of the time. It's like, well, we were kind of fed this our whole lives. We were told what would make us kind of more marketable, whether it was like, if I'm with a guy with big muscles who's over this height or whatever, I'm with this person who has these measurements or whatever, that feels actually really kind of depressing, like, and robotic, honestly. Like we've just been programmed. Whereas like beauty, this like big thing that you can't contain, like to me then, if somebody can't fully witness your beauty, I'm going to call it a them problem. You know what I mean? Like, and that's how I deal with rejection.
It's a great coping mechanism.
Is it healthy? What do you think, teacher?
It's a teacher.
You're a dating teacher, no?
I wouldn't say a teacher. I don't have a master class, but I would say I half super agree with you. I would say I agree with you, just maybe not through romantic lenses. I would say if we all had those quote unquote God eyes and could really peer into each other's souls and see all the good that we have and see our best qualities shine and see us like see our full potential and our full beauty. We would all love everyone around us. Right. But as you know, for what they were, for friends, for neighbors, for employees, like we would all be in harmony, you know. And I mean, the good news is this is all hypothetical.
I guess in my like hypothetical universe, when you really break it down, it's pretty sexual. It's like everybody is sexually attracted to everybody. But actually, I'm not going to back off on that. I think it could be possible. What if heaven is heaven because it's just like a divine nirvana union of all unions?
Sure, listen.
You can cut that.
No, we're keeping that in. But I do think it would behoove you to walk around the planet thinking that way. When you meet someone thinking, okay, I only really see a small percentage of this human, but how can I see more? How can I find out where the beauty in them lies? How can I see the God in them? You know? It's funny. I was watching, do you watch Severance?
I love Severance.
Oh my gosh.
It's so good.
I love it so much, but I was thinking last night after an episode particularly rocked me in a positive way. I remember thinking, it's so interesting that they're like, it feels like their innies are almost like the best versions of themselves, the most like
so pure,
innocent and pure versions of themselves. And, you know, there's a little bit of a spoiler, but there's this part where, you know, one of them, his wife on the outside is meeting with his innie, and she's having trouble with his outie, but she starts to almost fall in love with his innie.
Sure. It'd be confusing.
It's almost like she, again, like for the first time is seeing all his goodness and all his purity and all his potential. And she starts to fall for that in him. And so I just loved it because I was like, well, what if I could try to see everyone's innie
Yeah.
Which is a weird sentence. But if you haven't seen the show.
And it's very specific. You should look it up.
Yeah. Maybe we'll cut this part. But yeah, I just like that idea of trying to find people's purity, I guess.
I mean, because it's there.
Mm-hmm.
The thing that was there when you were born,
Mm-hmm.
and the way that we talk to babies.
Yeah.
Do you ever think about that? Like how perfect they are? Even if you ever seen a baby where their like hair goes all the way down to their eyebrows, like when they have the really furry foreheads, you know, like, or just like they look like little turtles or old men. You know what I mean? Yeah. And you're just so in love with them and they're so perfect. And then they get like all chunky and you love it and it's just perfect. You're still that. You're totally still, I am too. I really believe that you're still that thing that like, that's your consciousness. That's your awareness that purity is there all the time.
Yeah, you're still a baby.
You are.
Yeah.
You are like that. It's the same thing.
You're every version of yourself that's ever existed. You're sort of an amalgamation of all that.
Do you think that includes like future versions, or are you just thinking about like all of your...
That's maybe a bit intense for me.
I'm just wondering how cosmic we're going.
let me marinate on that. I think in a grand eternal scheme of things, yes, but I think I can't, like, future me, I can't lean on any part of my future, right? I feel like I can lean on all past versions of myself.
The closest I feel like I can come with my limited view is that sometimes I like to envision like a 50-year-old, 70-year-old, 90-year-old version of myself and see what happens.
She's pretty hot.
I think she's pretty hot. She's way hotter than me.
Oh, she just gets better and better.
I think so. I think that's how people work. But I feel like we probably don't totally agree about attractiveness. I'm not positive.
I'm not sure you're going to totally agree about that with any man. You know?
I find that kind of depressing, but also not surprised.
I just think we're wired differently.
I mean, I just think like, I don't know, like, I just feel like it's so much more about vibes than we really think. But you do, but you feel like there's like a level of attractiveness and then you can improve upon that, but you can't explain that.
I don't think I can, because I like someone, make her magically look better to me in my eyes. I think as I fall in love with her, I start to notice more and yes, she does get a little bit more attractive.
It's like richer.
Yeah. She's like, whatever version of her, it's more lit up, right? It's more vibrant, but it's still whatever we started with.
I would want to know if you have any male listeners who would disagree with the idea that like men basically, let me repeat. If I remember right, we talked about this before we started. I don't remember.
Yeah.
Talk about flow states, man. I have no idea how long it's been.
We've just been yapping. Yeah.
But you were saying earlier that with men, you would say that you rarely hear about a man saying, I wasn't really attracted to her at first, but then I got to know her better. And it was like, and women say that all the time. Yeah. Like I hear it all the time. And I felt it before.
To me, that's all the data we need.
Just you and your experiences, like just the fact. But I feel like I've met men who've said the opposite. I want to know. I want to know if that's like anecdotal or not.
I'm going to ask a follow-up question that's not especially nice. I would say, have these men that have said that, do they have very good options? Are
you asking me if they're ugly?
Uh-huh.
Oh my gosh.
No, I'm not asking if they're ugly. I'm just asking if they like can be a little pickier.
Like, are they able to pick from conventionally attractive female options?
Right.
I guess.
Because I do think some guys are realists and they're like, this is the best I can get, so I'm not going to be too picky here.
Like life has taught them, okay, I'm going to argue that life has given them a favor because life has taught them to see beauty in more places than just what this like standard you're handed, that it's like, it's the cheerleader and everything below that's depressing. No?
I feel like you're interpreting what I'm saying.
Help me understand. I'm genuinely really curious about it.
Yeah.
I wish that I could just be a man for a day, or maybe my whole life. Could it be easier?
Would it?
I don't know. It's hard to say.
Yeah. Yeah, it's so hard because we'll never really know the other's experience. And obviously, like, I am speaking in generalities.
Sure.
But I'm just telling you, like, of all the men I've ever talked to, I can't, maybe there's some, but I can't think of anyone that's actually said that. And to me,
unless they didn't have tons of options.
Yeah.
Yeah, I feel like.
And I'm not saying that's good and how it should be. I'm just saying.
Yeah, maybe neutrally.
That's how it is.
That's the information.
Yeah.
Because I guess there have been times where I feel. Let me know if this sounds Pollyanna-ish. This feels like a nice opportunity, like, for me to like ask this question. Yeah. Sometimes I have felt like a woman's proximity to the beauty ideal can be actually kind of damaging, because the closer that you are to the beauty ideal, the more that you are like seeking to be like that thing. So that on its own is damaging. But the other thing is that you can end up with partners who are kind of with you just because of how you look. But the further you're from it, when people are with you, you feel like they really love you for you.
I would push back.
Please.
I would push
back.
I
want to hear everything.
I would push back and say that could be true, but it could also just be desperation. And that's
desperation.
That's I'm with this person not because I have transcended
but because I
beauty,
don't have options.
But because I don't have options.
This might be like, have you ever heard of the term depressive realism?
Sure.
That's what it's bringing up.
Okay, well, let's focus on the realism.
No, but it's depressing because I think I've always had this romantic idea that like that somebody can fall in love with your like spirit.
Riddle me this.
Yeah.
And listen, I love romanticizing things, so I'm here for it. I'm just disagreeing with you on some things.
It's okay.
How often do you see a very, very traditionally attractive man with a girl that is not very traditionally attractive?
I would say it's pretty rare.
Right.
And when I see it, there's a part of me that just claps, like stadiums of clapping.
Sure. But you see the inverse all the time.
Yeah.
So that's all I'm saying is that's like tends to be how it is.
But I mean, there's an element here that gets a little spooky. I would say ageism, right? So like one of the other very common things we see is that men will be like, it's very like May December relationships are much more common with older men than women, right? So like a man with a woman 20 years younger is very, very common. And this could also be chalked up to men being visually driven. But I don't know. Like I remember hearing somebody, I think it was Brian McLaren, talk about how there's a concept sometimes that we like go back to that like, oh, well, this is just the way we're wired. This is like our biology. What are we supposed to do? But like we literally like we believe in evolution. Like we understand it as a scientific principle. So like we can evolve.
Yeah, it can be a cop out for sure.
Sure. And so in this situation, there's something kind of scary because if we're just gonna say that like men are just attracted to what they're attracted to, women change into like they change out of what men are attracted to. They literally are like no longer fertile even after a certain point. So if it's all about fertility and it's all about like, I don't know, caveman brain or whatever we're talking about, that's why I find it so depressing, because it basically means that like a women should be terrified.
They should be.
What hope do we have?
Listen, I'm just saying they have reason to be statistically concerned, right? And I will concede, I believe women are more evolved in this area.
Sure.
More evolved than me, certainly. I'll tell you about a study I read that I thought was very interesting and probably disconcerting.
I can handle it. Let's go.
The study was, as men and women age, what is the average age that they find the most attractive? Are you familiar with this study?
Yes, but keep going for the listeners, please.
I don't remember the precise numbers, but it was basically that men
Yes, it's so bad.
are the most attracted to a girl between like 19 and 23 or
21,
whatever.
24, 22, 23, 22, 22,
Right.
21.
And women tend to be attracted to men their age
Yeah.
as they get older. So when they're 60, they're attracted to 60-year-olds.
Right.
You know?
And they trended slightly younger as they got older.
Right.
Yeah.
And to me, I'm like, okay, that's the data. And I totally understand what you're saying. Like,
About evolution.
yeah, can we not evolve and think past that? And some men do. I'm just saying those are the averages. Those are what you're going to run into. And so I just try to tell people, like, don't be mad at the reality.
I think that, the tragedy of it is it's like, it's just the complete, like, two-dimensionalizing of female sexuality.
Mm-hmm.
Like the idea, and this isn't you, but I mean, like, the concept, like the study. I remember palpably watching like the TikTok where a woman broke that down a couple months ago. And of course it's not surprising. It's not surprising at all. But like, I think one of the things that I guess like a big grief bubble comes up for me, because there's something so strange about the idea that, like, even though women can experience like insane sexual pleasure until they're dead,
Mm-hmm.
that like this period of their lives is when they're deemed sexy,
Mm-hmm.
when they're deemed desirable. So much of like the female orgasm has to do with like being wanted and being desired. And so we end up just sort of saying that female sexuality is essentially youth.
Mm-hmm.
That female sexuality is basically how much do you look like a pinup girl,
Mm-hmm.
or like a teenager in a magazine. And it's so much bigger than that.
Sure.
Like, women exist and are sexual and continue to be like these big creative forces. But it's like, there's a part of me that's like, how do we get like men and women to understand how big female sexuality is really?
Well, that's a whole nother topic. I don't know.
I just think that it's heartbreaking, I guess.
Yeah.
And I'm going to work on it.
Okay. Okay.
That's the best I got.
Okay. Good. I'm excited for you.
I mean, what else am I going to do? I'm getting older.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. No, it's, I've always said, like, as much as I struggle with the whole, like, being single whilst I'm aging,
Mm-hmm.
I do not envy the plight of the woman in my same shoes.
Yeah. I would say that there are like obvious unfair elements to it.
Yeah, totally.
But I would also say like the deepening is really real. I'm not going to lie and say that I wouldn't prefer to be a man right now. I feel like I'd be like sitting in less of a hot seat at 35.
Yeah.
But I can't deny it. It's made me cooler.
Yeah.
I feel, you know what I mean? I'm just like, I'm having to dig deeper.
Yeah.
And I'm having to honestly like join my sisters.
Yeah.
Like, this is real. I'm not going to escape this.
Yeah.
We're at this stage in history. I live in Western society. I grew up on these movies. We all did. This is what we're doing.
Mm-hmm.
Can we do it together?
Yeah.
That's all I got a lot of the time.
Okay.
I don't know. What do you tell your clients? How do you tell them to have hope when it's like, well, he's just gonna think you're ugly?
No, that's not what I think.
Okay, good.
I just think, yeah, I just think it's helpful for women to understand what men tend to think. Whether what they tend to think is right or wrong,
sure,
is a separate conversation. Right?
Just to be aware of reality.
Yeah, just to be aware that we are so deeply visual and we are concerned about X, Y, and Z probably more than we should be, right? Just know that, you know?
Yeah.
Just know that. And so, but you know, there's, like I said, I think there's someone for everyone, but if you're like struggling with your options, just look in the mirror and ask yourself, what can I do to improve those options? You know?
Is it always in the mirror?
the metaphorical mirror.
Sure.
Yeah.
Take a good look at yourself.
Yeah. If you're, I just, this is a harsh thing to say that I don't want to say, but I've told some women this. If you're struggling with the dating options you have, the thing you can do right away that will immediately give you more options is to get in the best shape possible.
Sure. That's probably true for men too, right?
Yeah.
I just had somebody say that to me yesterday.
Yeah.
It was like, whenever I'm telling men how to make dating easier, I always tell them to get muscles.
Right. And like some guys, that might be like triggering for them to hear, but it's kind of the same as saying like, well, girls should lose weight and they'll have more options.
Yeah.
It sounds worse.
I think they're both, but
it's the same thing. Just get yourself in the best physical condition possible. And I'm not saying like everyone needs to do that, but I'm saying if you want more options.
Sure. Because there's a contrarian in me that's like, well, you can also just say, damn the man, I'm doing it my way, no matter what. Like always. You can look at the averages. You can look at the statistics. Do they work in your favor a lot of the time anyway? No. Do it your way.
Sure.
Live your life. Be yourself. Yeah. And maybe that's what's gotten me here, is that I refuse to just look at reality and do what reality is telling me to do.
I'm just, it's, and maybe we're harping too much on a certain part of this, but I'm like, if you're, a really argumentative and contentious and difficult person to be around, like look in the mirror and say, maybe this is why I'm struggling with relationships, because I'm not easy to be around. And so be a little bit easier to be around and you'll have more options.
Yeah.
That's all I'm saying.
It's,
but it's really difficult. I say it flippantly, just look in the mirror, but it's really difficult to kind of self-assess and be like, what could I improve that would improve my position in the dating market?
Yeah. Even having friends and family that would be honest with you about that, I think would be hard to find.
Yeah.
I don't know how many people are even, like, I've definitely not asked the question, like,
I have friends that,
what's wrong with me?
Yeah. I have friends
Just
that
tell me.
we've had those discussions about family,
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Can do no wrong with a family.
That's kind of nice.
Yeah.
A good safe place. I go back and forth on this. Constantly, which makes me think that, I think it's Richard Rohr who talks about, a lot of people talk about paradox. But like almost everything feels like if you're not kind of dancing with some paradox, then there's maybe not enough truth in it. And this idea that like there's something you can improve versus this whole grace that like you're exactly where you need to be, that God doesn't want you married and that's why you're not married, like whatever, like this can be taken to a degree that would like make you, I guess, almost like give up or not feel motivated, or maybe not be as active in your life. But this also feels like this could be so problematic, like the idea that it's like, well, you just change yourself, or like just figure out how you could fix the vessel. When honestly, a lot of the time, I think what's going on is that people don't like themselves enough. I definitely feel like that's been my experience with a lot of men, where I'm like, do you know that you hate yourself?
Right.
Because I can tell from talking to you that you do. And you can't really properly love someone if you hate yourself. Because the whole thing will be about needing me to be okay with you at all times, because you're not okay with yourself. That's just you're not really very capable of being there for another person in that way.
No, I totally agree. I just think it's not about changing yourself, it's about improving.
Yeah.
And I think it's funny, sometimes I've been frustrated because I'm like, dang it, I have improved in a lot of areas of my life, and so I am actually a much better option right now. But yeah, sometimes, but then my age is a liability.
Your age is a liability? You think so?
Sure.
Do you think it's just because of the Mormon community stuff? I mean, we didn't talk about like who you're dating, but
it's I think there's a little bit of causality there, but I think more than anything, it's just exposure. If someone isn't used to dating people of a certain age, when they meet someone that age, it's too old, it's scary, it's whatever.
Okay.
So if you're in a college town, if you're in whatever, if you're dating someone that's the oldest child, and so you're like
not that much younger than their parents, kind of a thing.
Yeah, or you're like, yeah, you're too close to like an uncle's age,
Sure.
or something, you know.
Sure.
But sometimes a younger child, they're around older people, and the dynamics are just different. But I for sure I know it's been a liability.
I think I mean, I have so many like unfounded thoughts, but I was talking with Diana about this the other day because I think that Mormons, we're actually not very, when you really look at like all the couples around you, we're not that big on the May December couple. Not really.
Yeah.
We're kind of like all about the power couple, like the people right around the same age a lot of the time, but it's pretty rare that someone much younger ends up with someone much older when you really look at it.
Yeah, and that's more than anything, I think, just because most people just get married young.
Totally.
You know?
Totally.
And so the people that are more extended in age are like they're outliers in and of themselves.
Yeah.
No matter who they marry.
I mean, I'm choosing to believe that that's like set me up for an interesting adventure, you know, at this point in my life. I just feel like what I thought was going to be my path absolutely isn't going to be. So in some ways it has, I mean, and it's not to say like, it's not to say that it's not to say that I'm not trying to damn the community, I guess is what I'm saying. Yeah. But like, if people don't have open minds about a certain thing, then like we got to go where the open minds are, right? Yeah. Like that's been my experience. Sure. At least. Like there are a lot of men who are more interested in older women, but they're not necessarily Mormon.
Right. Yeah.
That's okay.
Yeah.
That's okay. Yeah. What are people supposed to do other than like what they like?
Yeah, it's hard because I think you'd find the same exact things in a Jewish community. I think you would find
like super family oriented.
Just where there's not much room for like just couples tend to get married young marriage. And so yeah, they're not used to dealing with they're used to being like, okay, what did my parents look like and what did my friends' parents look like? And so they grow up thinking, well, that's what I want. Right. And anything else is weird and foreign and probably not what I want. Yeah.
There's a little bit of like
I wouldn't blame Mormonism or Christianity or anything. It's just a cultural like reality. Yeah. Yeah.
So when you approach dating, like, can I ask, like, is there like a certain type of posture you like to take, like to stay open? Or are you really just like, you mentioned earlier that sometimes you go to a party and if you're there to specifically meet other single people, that you'll leave after you talk to the people that you feel like are interesting. Is there like, how do you approach? Like, what is drawing you in? Is it people who fall into a certain category, or is it a more spiritual thing for you? Like, how do you position yourself toward dating?
Just as far as like what I'm looking for? I'm not positive what you're asking.
I guess I'm just trying to figure out what it is that makes you, like, are you looking for people who are in a certain age range? Are you looking for like certain things and those are the people you'll approach? Or is it something?
Oh, not really. I can kind of look at the data and be like, I tend to have success in this range.
Sure.
And this tends to have complications, maybe on this high end and also on the low end.
Sure.
And so I kind of, in the back of my head, play the numbers, but I'm open to anything.
So is it more of a vibe thing or just a physical attractiveness thing?
I mean, again, I think you think all I care about is attractive levels.
It's come up a bit.
I think it's really important.
I think that's fair.
Yeah. But I think it's like when I think about like my ex-girlfriends, like I'll tell you all about how amazing they were. I won't tell you about how hot they were, you know? Were they also hot? Yeah. And I loved it and it was great for me.
Sure.
I've just realized there's a certain level of attraction that if it's not there, I'm not happy. I'm not satisfied. And so I'm going to continue to seek that level. But whether, that level, whatever it is, if it's in that area, it doesn't matter. It doesn't need to be great. Like, it doesn't need to go past that. So I really don't think it's even that important to me.
Well, that's nice.
And I don't go out with people I'm not attracted to. So I'm not like, I don't feel like I'm even that picky because every person I go out with, I'm interested in.
I'm assuming that you usually do the asking.
Yeah.
Usually.
Yeah.
Because I think that there are probably also a fair bit of women who go out with people they're not attracted to because they were asked.
Right. If I get a whiff that they're just doing me a solid, I won't do it. Yeah.
That's some good social. That's some good social EQ.
I'm not in the business of cajoling a woman into being interested.
Me neither. It's like the most miserable thing in the world.
Yeah. And I know here's the reality. I know I'm interesting, charming enough that I can get most girls to say yes to a date, whether they actually want to or not. And so I try to freaking read the room.
Because you tend to have high numbers when you ask.
Yeah. And but that doesn't mean they actually want to go out with me.
Yeah, that's tricky. That's hard.
Yeah.
That's like, it sounds like something you've actually had to like figure out how to game out.
Yeah, it's a little bit tricky.
Yeah.
But yeah, you can kind of tell pretty quick how interested they are. I'll give them a couple I'll give them a couple tries, but I just try to think, okay, how would she act if she was super interested in me and was stoked that I got her number? Probably not like this.
Everybody's different though. What if she's just nervous?
That's why I give them a couple chances.
Yeah. That's
but if we're like rescheduling 3 or 4 times,
sure,
and she's going 0 dark 30 on me, I'm like, okay, I can persist. I can be a really persistent person, but I don't want that to be like, I don't want to just, my goal isn't to just, I got you on a date.
Well, I mean, sometimes you just need an opportunity to shine because people don't see you fully at first. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I don't know. I feel like it can be complicated.
Yeah.
I have a specific anecdote to ask you about. So I have a friend who was reaching out who said that he was struggling because it was taking a girl 3 to 5 business days to respond. I just loved how formal he was about it. It's like, I'm having to wait 3 to 5 business days for this person to respond. Mm-hmm. Do you think that's definitely a no? Or do you think that there's room for, like, what should a person do if, like, with the texting stuff, isn't it so awful? How much of dating is texting?
Here's my take. And this is tough because I like texting and I'm a good texter.
Because you're a writer. There's nothing like texting. You're a writer. You write books.
Yeah, I'm just saying, it's probably part of it.
I think it's a big part of it.
Yeah, it's probably a big part of it.
Yeah. Do you write music too?
No.
Oh, but poetry?
A little bit. But I just kind of do it for fun. I'm not a poet by any stretch of the imagination. But yeah, so I would say it's like 80% chance she's not interested if it's 3 to 5 business days. But I also realize some people are horrible texters and they will text that way with people they really are interested in. Mm-hmm. That boggles my mind, But yeah, I dated a girl that was a horrendous texter.
And
hated it.
Yes. Awful the whole time.
Yeah. I just love, when I'm with somebody I care about and I really, really like, I want kind of as much communication as we can get. Sure.
And texting seems like an avenue that could be used.
Yeah.
I'm also a big fan of texting, but only when I'm a polarized texter. Mm-hmm. I hate texting before I really know someone. It's awful. Yeah. Where I'm like, I don't even know what voice you said this in.
Right.
Am I supposed to be laughing or are you sad?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It's the worst. I hate trying to figure that out with like somebody who I don't know well enough. Like we met on an app and we haven't met yet, or we met once for like an hour or whatever. It's awful. Yeah. But yeah, I love texting, especially like when you can tell you're both up late.
Yeah.
It's just the best. You just text all night.
That's great. Yeah.
It's the funnest.
I will say sometimes I don't like if I'm interested enough in a girl and she's texting me back every 3 to 5 days, it's more about what's the quality of those texts when they do come in.
Right, because I would say that based on her text back, it seems like this girl isn't completely disinterested. Would I say that he's at like the top of her priority list? No.
She's also
but
probably...
that doesn't mean she's completely disinterested.
Right. I would also say she's not incredibly emotionally available, maybe.
Yeah.
Which is fine. Like, okay, we're going to wrap up. But let me tell you about what I consider the 4 stages of availability.
Oh.
And I think this is important to remember.
Okay.
Because I think a lot of times we assume when we meet people and we're texting or we're talking that they're available, right? So stage 1 is this person is not available. They're in a relationship, they're married, they're betrothed, whatever.
Right.
Not available. Stage 2, they are out of that relationship, but pretty still hung up. They're still in love. They're getting over it. They might even be going on dates, meeting new people, but not super available.
Right.
Stage 3, you're over that person. You're single, ready to mingle. You're dating. You're back on the apps. You're feeling young. You're great. Stage 4 is you've met somebody and you're starting to fall. You're excited, but you're maybe still fielding other options. You're maybe still going on other dates. Maybe it's not official yet. Maybe,
sure.
You know,
you're not all in yet.
Yeah, you're going on dates with 4 or 5 people, but you've gone on 12 dates with this one person, right? And so the point is, the sweet spot is really only stage 3, right? That's when you're going to get somewhere with somebody. The problem is you will often meet people while you're dating that are in stage 2 or stage 4.
So true.
And you don't really know,
mm-hmm.
you know, and you can't really, you can ask, but people probably won't tell you.
No, because they're emotionally not
Yeah.
committing to you.
Exactly. And so I've tried to just keep that in mind when I'm feeling like, why is this girl taking, 3 to 5 business days
there might be
to get back
else.
to me? She's probably in stage 2 or 4.
Mm-hmm.
That's fine. She'll get out of stage 2 or 4 at some point, and
sure.
Hopefully I'll be around when she is.
It'll be clearer to me what to do, at least. Like if she goes deeper with the person who she's in stage 4 with, and goodbye.
Yeah.
That's really helpful.
Yeah.
I think that's a helpful thing for people who are dealing with rejection in general, because it can be really confusing, but you just make sense of like, there's people are living their storied lives.
Yeah.
And
because I can tell myself,
small peak.
Like if I'm going up and like trying to get girls' numbers nonstop, like that's my goal. I want to meet girls. I'm just going to go out in the wild and get numbers. If that's my MO, what'll happen is I'll get a certain amount of rejections. A lot of them will be really polite, right? And some, they'll even give me their number, but they will never text back or whatever, right? I can take that really personally, or I can be like, what percentage of these girls were actually even in stage 3?
Right. Like weren't even really able to.
Like what percentage of them might have been interested in me had they been more available?
Yeah.
So I just think it's helpful to remember that.
It's a good one.
Yeah.
I'm going to use that.
Use it.
Thank you.
Okay. Final question.
Oh man. If it's anything like that other one, I'm nervous.
No, you're going to be so great. No, I just want to kind of turn the tables around and say, okay, if there's one last thing you could ask me, what would you ask?
I think that I would love to know, over the course of your experience dating and being in and out of love in your adult life, what superpowers do you think you've developed?
Oh, wow. That's a terrific question.
Thank you.
Superpowers. I think I have a good answer.
Oh, good. You better.
I think I've experienced so much that I have a really clear vision of what true love looks like. And I think when I was younger, it's not that I hadn't experienced it, because I had experienced it in some forms and for some periods of time, but I was so there was some naivety, but I was also like, so everything was just so emotional, right? Everything was happening for the first time and everything was novel. And now I've experienced it all more than I would like to. But that has shown me how good it can really be.
Yeah.
And how magical it can really be. And I know some people think, okay, you have unrealistic expectations or you're too picky. And I think, no. I just have taken a lot of years to discover what's out there and what is attainable. And so when I see it, I'm like, okay, that's the best thing in the world, and I'm going to hold on to it, right? And when you are single for a lot of years, you spend a lot of time being sort of a relationship voyeur, right?
Yeah, that's a good.
And so you see pure love in other people too, and you see bad love. You see relationships that you're like, they claim they're happy, but I would rather die than be in that, you know? And so I think it's a bit of a gift and a superpower, which I love how you phrase that, to be able to recognize what is really impactful, beautiful, soul-giving love, and what is just, I'm lonely, this person will do, you know? And so I can sleep at night, I'm going to call it love. But it's really just, sometimes I look at a couple and I'm like, I'm not convinced you guys are really in love. I'm convinced you just wanted to be married and happened to meet each other.
Yeah.
And I'm not interested in that.
Know thyself.
That's right. That's right. Yeah. What about you? Great. Any superpowers?
Oh, I didn't think you were going to turn it on me. I thought we were done.
Well, say it quickly.
I feel like I am in some ways like living my worst fear when I was younger. It's like my worst fear that I would end up alone, if you can call it alone. Yeah. I'm so not alone.
Yeah.
But I feel like it has been a thorn in my side, like my singleness, or this like unanswerable question, or this like thing I feel like I've been waiting for, or different chapters of my life I've looked at it in different ways. But like dancing with this like I don't know, unfairness sometimes too has been, I think, maybe the best thing that ever happened to me, because it's forced me to actually really see how unfair life is, and how many people are struggling with some unmet expectation. And I just feel it in such a visceral way because we're so romanticized and we talk about love and relationships and all this stuff. And I feel like it's a really great, obvious, symbolic example. Everybody just understands this girl isn't getting what she wants. And it's true. And I kind of love that I have to show up human all the time. And I love that it's forcing me to really, really look around and see myself and my struggle as just a part of being a person, and feeling more connected to people instead of less connected to people, and not feeling like there's something wrong with me, but that there's something about life that's really important to experience, and that maybe not getting what you want is the best thing that could ever happen to you. Yeah, I think for me it's giving me like freedom. Yeah. I'm living your worst fear.
Yeah.
And I'm
so
happy.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm happy and I feel good. And it's sort of like on the other side of our unmet expectations, like sometimes I think people use this, they use the like talk about settling, like you're in a relationship and it's like, well, it's better than nothing. I don't think nothing is bad because I don't think nothing is ever nothing.
Yeah.
It's like, what do you mean by nothing? It could mean like endless sunset bike rides and like homemade bread and like the most insane dance parties of your life. And like, you have no idea what nothing is. That's why it's scary, but it's like, give me nothing over and over and over again, you know? Yeah. So I feel like, I guess my answer is that I feel like kinder, deeper, and more fearless. So
yeah, more empathetic.
I'll take it. Yeah.
Well, Mallory, you're a G.
You're a G. It's been great chatting.
Yeah, it's been awesome. It's been one of our longer episodes for a while. So you
can cut it all. You can cut whatever you need. I won't be offended.
No, we won't cut anything, honestly.
You don't cut?
We don't cut. We cut like
I'm terrified.
We cut like if there's something you're like, hey, can you please? I didn't love that I said this, you know. But yeah, we just like it to feel like it was what it actually was.
Oh, goodness. You know? All right. Well, if you got this far, everybody, I love you.
Yeah, we really, really care about you. And you should probably go get something to eat now.
I know. I don't know if the mic has been picking up my stomach.
Yeah, that's great. Okay, awesome. Well, happy journeys back to LA.
Thank you. Okay. Appreciate it.
Okay.